Would the offender please introduce yourself for the record, stating your name and DOC number?
Davede Lamonde 114764.
Thank you. Let me explain the process to you. First, I will read information into the record, then the board will conduct a parole interview with you. At the end, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes. Do you understand the process, sir?
Yes.
Okay, just real quick, we do have John Mannion, who's on the phone, who's a victim, but will not be speaking. Okay, this is the case for Davede DOC 114764, date of birth January 27, 1968, classified as a fourth felony offender. Offenses: molestation of a juvenile, oral sexual battery, simple burglary, first-degree robbery, attempted second-degree kidnapping, possession of Schedule II, habitual offender, add penalty. Sentencing dates are: first docket, originally sentenced August 15, 1994, revoked on May 31st, 1996. Next one, sentenced on November 17, 1997. Next docket, originally sentenced May 21st, 1997, resentenced June 3rd, 2004. Next docket, May 21st, 1997, resentenced February 8th, 2000. Next sentence, originally sentenced November 16, 2007, resentenced December 4th, 2007. Sentenced to 4 years hard labor, 10 years hard labor, 20 years hard labor, 18 years hard labor, and 20 years hard labor. Parole date is January 31st, 2021. Good time is July 29th, 2030. Full term is February 1st, 2036. Is this information correct, sir?
Yes.
Mr. Roche.
Thank you, Ms. Teresa. Good morning, Mr. Davalier. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Mr. Davalier, I'm going to enter some information into the record. And if any of that information is incorrect, would you please correct me, okay?
Yes, sir.
Sit back, relax, and we're going to have a conversation, okay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davalier, you're currently 53 years old, and you are classified as a fifth felony offender. You've been incarcerated for 14 and a half years on a 29-year sentence, so you have served about 50% of your sentence, and you were billed as an habitual offender. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell me, when was your last disciplinary write-up?
I think in 19.
Warren, would you verify that for me, please?
Yes, sir. Well, it actually happened in that 2018. He didn't go in front of the disciplinary board. It was right at the end of the year. He went in front of the disciplinary board, January the 2nd of 19.
And that was for contraband, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was the contraband, Mr. Davalier?
Either a lighter or tobacco dried out.
Okay. All right. Tell me about the programs you completed since you've been incarcerated.
I've completed GED, living in balance, cage of rage, substance abuse education, NAAA 12-step, BTG phases 1 through 4, faith-based dawn, principles of manhood, Islamic study, fast, pre-release. That's it.
And I see you have certificates for the first 2 phases of sex offender treatment. Did you complete the 3rd and 4th phase of your sex offender treatment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we verify that, Warden?
I will. Yes, sir.
Because you didn't submit the certificates for the 3rd and 4th phase of your sex offender treatment. If you have them, just fax them over to us. Let's continue. Tell me where you're employed at the facility.
I work in education department at night, cleaning up and resetting for school in the morning.
Okay, so you're orderly.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you classified as a trustee?
No, a medium security press offender.
Okay. Tell me about your transition plan. Where do you plan to live and where do you plan to work?
I have a residence. My aunt and my mother is helping me with a residence and a transportation. I have another aunt helping me with a job at a restaurant named after my grandmother.
Has that address been approved by probation and parole?
Yes, sir.
So there's no schools, daycare centers, parks, or any recreation where juveniles.
No, sir.
Okay. Tell me about your drug and alcohol issues.
Been using drugs since I was 14 years old. And I understand how it's affected my life and the lives of everyone that's in my family.
What would your drug of choice?
Crack cocaine.
And how old were you when you used crack cocaine for the first time?
Probably was like 16 or 17.
And how long did that habit last?
Till I got incarcerated.
So 14 years ago.
Yes, sir.
So you're 53. So from 16 to 39, you use drugs on a regular basis.
Yes, sir.
And you finished Living in Balance, which is a drug education program. Have you had any drug treatment since you've been incarcerated?
I completed NA and AA 12 step and substance abuse education as well.
Okay, okay. Tell me if and when you're ever released, what is your sobriety plan? How do you plan to stay away from drugs and alcohol?
Well, I already have a uncle. He has invited me to NAAA classes, group on the street.
Okay. Have you ever been on supervision before?
Me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
How'd you do?
I violated. I went home in 2006 from Angola, and I violated.
You also violated in 1986, 1996, and 2007, and you've been incarcerated since that, right?
Yes, sir.
So why should I vote to put you on supervision again when you have 14 years left on your sentence?
Because I've made a lot of positive changes in my life. I want better, so I know I have to do better for myself as well as my family. I'm tired of the life I was living.
Well, there's nothing you can do about this, but you have strong opposition from the DA's office. Law enforcement is opposed to your early release. We have a letter from the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office asking that you not be released. And we have a strong statement from the victim who's adamantly opposed to your release. And she is frightened to death because you have contacted her from incarceration, and you have threatened and harassed this young lady even while you're incarcerated. Are you aware that you should have no contact or no communication with your victim at all?
I have never contacted my victim, sir.
Okay, well, I was afraid you were going to say that simply because I wouldn't admit to breaking the law either. But this young lady has submitted a statement and said that you have harassed her on a number of occasions with communications while you were incarcerated. And she is emotionally, mentally, and physically affected by the harassment that you've given her after committing the crime that you committed. So, have you ever, and I'll give you another chance, have you ever contacted the victim after you were incarcerated?
No, sir, I never contacted the victim. I spoke to the victim when I got out in 2006 at church. I spoke to the victim with my mother. Since then, I haven't talked to her.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Marabella, that completes my interview.
Mr. Roche,
By the way, Warden Bickham, do you have any comments?
first of all, he has completed all 4 phases. He completed on that, last class was in March of 2013. I'd like to add on to it that he does work in education building order. He's been doing that job for 8 years straight, which is keeping a job like that in this system is a pretty good record for itself.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate your comments. Mr. Marabella?
Thank you. I don't believe our Mr. Mannion wishes to speak. Is that correct, Ms. Teresa? I think I'm correct. Mr. Mannion, you don't wish to speak. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Mr. Wise, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I've went over the files and everything pretty thorough. I got my decision made.
Okay. Mr. Davalier, would you like to make a closing statement or a final statement to the committee before we vote?
Yes, I just would like to say my past does not define the person I am today. He spoke about a victim. I'm on a possession charge. I don't have a victim in this case. I understand I have a victim in a prior case, and I never contacted them. So I don't understand that part of the procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Davalier. Mr. Is the panel ready to vote?
Yes,
Mr. Roche?
Mr. Davalier, I'm not willing to give you a chance today because of your extensive criminal background. You're a 5th felony offender. You have a very poor supervision history. You've been on supervision 4 times and been revoked on 3 occasions. The DA's office is strongly opposed. You have law enforcement opposition. The victim is adamantly opposed to your release. You have a moderate risk assessment, which tells us that you have a moderate chance of reoffending. And with your criminal history with 5 felony convictions, I understand why it's moderate. And you also have high needs. So I think you need to take some additional programs, spend some additional time with good conduct, and maybe next cycle when you reapply, it might be a different story. But today I'm going to deny your request based on all the reasons I've already articulated.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Wise?
At this time, I'm gonna be voting to deny. I think your criminal history, you're a fifth class offender with the sex crime that you have there. Any programs you take will be needed. I mean, take any program. You got very strong law enforcement opposition against your release. Also, you have strong victims opposition against your release. And you're set up as a medium risk factor. So today, my vote is to deny. Thank you very much.
Mr. Davalier, you have 2 votes to deny. My vote likewise will be to deny. I would encourage you to continue to work hard and to try to get some programs under your belt for the next time you come before us. So good luck to you, sir.
Okay, so the hearing we just watched took place on July 28, 2021. We're going to fast forward a year to August 31st, 2022 to see his second hearing. Thank you, Richard, for making it easy to connect the dots. At the end of the hearing, we'll review details of his cases. But with that, let's jump in.
Our next case is Mr. Davede De Villiers. Mr. De Villiers, would you please give us your full name and DOC number? Can you hear me, sir? I think you might be on mute. I can't tell if you're.
I can hear y'all.
We can hear you.
Okay. Could you give us your full name and your DOC number, please?
Davede Lamonde D 114764.
Mr. Davalier, let me explain our process to you. First, I'm going to read some information into the record, and then the board is going to conduct a parole interview with you. At the appropriate time, we will allow the participants who've indicated they wish to speak to have their input. In support today is your aunt, Miss Wanda Jarvis. Your attorney, Miss Jane Hogan, is here. Miss Hogan, would you like to make an appearance?
Good morning, Mr. Marabella. I'll make a statement at the end with the committee's approval. I'm representing Mr. Davalier, sorry.
Thank you very much. Mr. Davalier, at the end, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes. Your lawyer will make the final statement and then the board will vote. Do you understand our procedure?
Yes, sir.
This is Davede Davalier. I'm sorry, I've been pronouncing it De Villiers the whole time. Mr. Davalier, whose date of birth is January the 27th of 1968. He's classified as a 5th felony offender. His parole eligibility date is January the 31st of 2021. He has an adjusted good time date of July 29th of 2030 and full term date of February the 1st of 2036. He is currently serving a 29-year sentence on the charges of simple burglary, second-degree kidnapping, first-degree robbery, and oral sexual battery and molestation of a juvenile in possession of cocaine. He was sentenced on July the 24th of 2007 for all of the charges except being adjudicated as a habitual offender for possession of cocaine. That sentence would have been on February the 14th of 2008. Mr. Davalier, is that basically correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davalier, Ms. Jackson has been assigned your case, and that basically means she's going to be the one on the panel to begin the interview process. So would you please answer any questions she might have?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Davalier. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How y'all doing?
Fine, thank you. I'm gonna start off the questioning of you. I just want you to relax. I'm gonna talk about things related to you as a person and to the crimes, all right?
Yes, ma'am.
How old are you?
54.
And how much time have you served on this crime, on these crimes? How long have you been in prison?
Been in prison 16 years on this possession charge.
On the possession of cocaine, the one you got treated as a habitual offender?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the only crime you're serving time for? Have you served the time on the other charges? Have you completed those sentences? Or do you still owe some more time on those sentences?
I completed those sentences from 96 to 206. I was discharged from Angola.
Yeah, but you were discharged on parole, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So that meant you still owed some more time.
Yes, ma'am.
So have you served all the time that you owed on those other charges?
Yes, I had to complete my parole sentence before I started the new sentence.
All right, so the 16 years that you've been on right now is the 29-year sentence on the cocaine as an habitual offender, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up. Mr. Davide, you're classified as a 5th felony offender. Help us understand why you were involved in so much criminal activity.
Drug use, being addicted to drugs.
What kind of drugs were you addicted to?
Alcohol, cocaine, and heroin.
When did you start drinking and using drugs? How old were you?
14 years old.
And what did you start using at 14?
Drinking alcohol.
Okay. How far did you go in school, Mr. Davide?
9th grade.
Why is that? What happened? Why did you stop going to school in the 9th grade?
By that time, I was hooked on cocaine. I had made a son. Just life was real out on a sparrow.
How old were you in the 9th grade? Do you remember?
I think I was 14.
How did the 14-year-old get hooked on cocaine?
Hanging with my stepbrother.
And was he older than you?
Yes, ma'am.
How much older?
I think of Mike is 6 years older than me.
Okay. Is he in prison?
Not right now.
And so you started using drugs and you dropped out of high school. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have a job at any time before coming to prison?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of work did you do?
Worked at Louisiana Lumber, J. Dean Page Construction, and Coast Installation.
Okay. Even though you served your time on the other charges, I do want to talk about the first-degree robbery, the kidnapping, and the molestation, and the burglaries. All right, let's talk about the burglaries. What do you remember about the burglaries?
Yeah.
Simple burglars on break into houses and cars, stealing items to sell to support the drug habit.
What about the second-degree kidnapping and the first-degree robbery? Tell us what happened.
It was the same incident. Me and Grace McThurn were getting loaded, and I took some items out of her truck. I moved her from the front of the truck to the side of the truck. That's how I got the kidnapping and the robbery charge.
You knew her?
Yes, we used to get loaded together.
Or why was she charged? Why would she have you arrested for robbery and kidnapping?
Because her husband came.
Okay. Who is the mother of the victim of the molestation?
Lisa Lewis.
And you were in a relationship with Miss Lewis?
Yes, ma'am.
How long were you in a relationship with her?
I would say a year, going on 2 years, something like that.
Did you ever move in with her?
No, we never lived together.
So when did you start molesting her daughter?
Guess like about 8 months after we was in a relationship, me and Lisa.
Why would you do that? And this was a little girl, 12 years old. Why would you do that?
I really don't know. It's just a dark time in my life, a time I take full responsibility for.
No. Everybody says that. I don't want to hear that. I mean, this was a 12-year-old girl. Her mother was somebody you were in a relationship with. And you took that as an opportunity to have sex with this little girl on multiple occasions. Explain that to her. Then you went through sex offender treatment, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You do all 4 phases of it?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you learn in sex offender treatment that helped you understand why you would do something like that?
I learned that I took advantage of someone that trusted in me. I took advantage of their trust. Just a lot of mistakes I made, bad choices I made.
How old were you when you were having sex with this little girl?
28.
How do you think what you did impacted her?
I'm sure it had a very negative impact on her life for trust issues. I'm sure she has trust issues now with her kids being around someone.
I know victim awareness comes up in sex offender treatment, but did you take a separate victim awareness course?
Yes, ma'am. Making a change for the good is also a class on sexual predators too, on sexual prevention and stuff like that.
What did you learn from that? How can you prevent repeating this kind of behavior?
Not placing myself in that situation, I learned more about what I sent the victim through, their families, as well as my family.
What courses have you taken to address your addiction?
I've taken substance abuse as well as NAA 12-step.
How long did you participate in the 12-step program?
It's like ongoing 12-step, so I still participate in that.
When did you start? How long ago did you start?
I think I first got into it in 2004 2012 or 2014, I've been there.
How often do you attend meetings?
When I work and they have the meetings, on the nights I work, I'll sit in the classes then.
Have you ever facilitated a class?
Not NA or AA. I facilitated the sex offender class,
Like that's phase 4.
yes.
What did you get out of living in balance?
Learn more about myself and about families and victims and stuff like that.
How did that help you?
It helped me to be a better person, to give me a better understanding of what I did in life, what I faced in life, where I'm at, and where I plan to go.
Would you say that you were either a drug addict or an alcoholic during the time that you were out on the street?
On the street outside, I was both a drug addict and alcoholic.
Well, how would you describe yourself today?
As a recovering alcoholic and a recovering drug addict.
What does that mean as a recovering addict or alcoholic? What does that mean? Explain what that means to you.
It means to me that it'll always be a problem in my life that I have to constantly address.
How do you think, if you were successful, what do you think you need to do to address it?
Continuing to stay grounded in AA and NA, obtain a sponsor, stay around positive people.
That's something that you're willing to do?
Yes, ma'am.
It's something that's important for you to do.
Yes, ma'am.
You've had, how many write-ups have you had in the last 16 years?
I think I've had 11 write-ups in 16 years.
Yeah, there was a discrepancy. It seems like on your master prison record, they had penciled in, they had written in 22, but on the actual compilation sheet, I saw 11. So I don't know if they were carrying them over from when you were in prison the first time before you paroled or not, but in the last 16 years, you've had 11. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The last one was in 2018. It was a contraband. What could you tell us about that?
I was still smoking, so I was buying a dip and drying it out and smoking. I was tobacco, drying it out to smoke.
Okay. And how did you get caught? What happened?
I think I was on the way pile smoking, and the officer caught me smoking.
Did they have a shakedown and find a lighter in your locker?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was your punishment for that?
I think I was given yard and rent.
What's PRESS? PRESS. Tell us about PRESS.
Press offender, mean of doing good, staying positive, stuff like that.
You got a club?
Well, I don't think, I'm not sure it's a club, it's a title that's given to offenders that are doing positive things.
And are you still in the honor dorm?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been in the honor dorm?
I think it's been open like 90 days since it opened.
It's been open about 4 months now.
Yes.
And do you have a job there at the facility?
Yes, ma'am. I've had the same job for 10 years as educational night auditor.
Okay, and what do you do in that job?
We set the classroom up for schools and keep the floors clean.
You've done that for 10 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Since being incarcerated, have you ever acquired any job skills, any vocational programs that you completed?
Well, I've been on backlog for welding.
Okay, so you haven't had a chance to take any kind of vocational skills.
No, ma'am.
If you were successful today, Mr. Davede, what would be your transition plan?
The transition plan, I have 2 job offers, have a residence, I have transportation.
Okay, tell us about your job offers.
One would be at my aunt restaurant, Selena Soul Food. Another will be with my Uncle Roland doing lawn service work.
Okay, and where would you live?
In Slidell. I have my own residence.
How do you have your own residence?
My mother bought me some land and a home.
Okay. You have transportation?
Yes, ma'am. She bought me a truck.
Okay. What would you say to the victims of your crime? All of them.
I would like to apologize to everyone my choices have affected. Victims, my family as well.
Warden, what can you tell us about Mr. Davede?
You know, being that he is in the honor dorm speaks highly of him and the work ethic that he's shown here, the respect that he shows, not only the employees here, but the offenders here and in the educational program. So I don't have anything bad to say about him. I think that, you know, especially since I've been here, he doesn't have any write-ups and he's done everything that he needs to do in here with us.
All right, thank you very much, Warden. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thank you. Now we hear from supporters, your aunt, Miss Wanda Jarvis. Ms. Jarvis? If you'll unmute your microphone and give us your name and tell us what you'd like us to know about your nephew.
Okay, yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wanda Jarvis. I am Davede Lamonde's aunt. Davede has grown a lot since I've been visiting him at Rayburn. I've been in constant communication with him. And one thing that I noticed a lot now is that he's asking for help. That is definitely a plus for us because he's never asked for help in the past. He's constantly telling us how he wants to continue with help as far as the narcotics, because he realizes now after all these years that that was a problem in his life, and it did wreak havoc on the entire family and the victims that you guys have referred to. We have made plans to, as soon as he get out, to put him into a Narcotics Anonymous class that's close to his house, right off of Gauls Boulevard West in Slidell. And they're willing to work around the hours that he plans to work. There is a 3rd job lined up, and I want to give him that opportunity to choose what job he's comfortable with when he get out, and that will be in a construction field. And that was the purpose of purchasing the truck for him, so that he can get to and from work. And I know that he will not be able to handle 3 jobs, but even if he can take on 2 and still meet all the requirements that the state requires as far as continuing with the narcotic classes, any alcohol classes. And my brother, who is also a sponsor, because I do have a brother who's in the alcohol, he's in the AA classes, and he said that he would stand by Davede no matter what. anything else that the state requires, I'm backing him. I do have prior law enforcement experience. So what I don't know, I work for about 25 attorneys now, and I can always turn to them to get the answers that I need to assist him.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jarvis. He is very, very fortunate to have you in his corner and have you supporting him. So
Thank you.
very much. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Davalier, is there anything you'd like to say before Ms. Hogan closes out for us?
Again, I would just like to apologize to anyone that my choices have affected.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Hogan, would you like to wrap it up for us?
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. As this committee has seen, Mr. Davalier has tremendous family support. He has now served 16 years of his sentence, which is a significant portion of his sentence. And I think it's really telling that in his last 16 years, he's never been written up for a dirty urine screen or any kind of contraband involving drugs. Even though he started the NA programs in 2012, as early as 2009, he completed a substance abuse course. So when he turned the corner, he turned it and he never looked back. In addition, although he hasn't acquired a vocational skill since he's been incarcerated, he has earned his GED twice, actually. He completed it in 2000, I believe it was 2010, and again, he had a GED from, I believe, 1998. He had, and he's completed every available program that has been offered to him, including 100 hours. Since he was denied a year ago, and even though he was denied in July of last year, he didn't get despondent. He didn't lose his motivation. He completed 2 additional courses, AVAL and Making Change for the Good, and he continued to work the same job. And he was offered the chance to move into the honor dorm whenever it became open. Mr. Davalier is now 54 years old. This is an excellent time to release him. He's still healthy. He's got job opportunities. He's got a vehicle. He's got a loving family that is going to support him and make sure that he is successful. And for all of those reasons, we would ask this committee to grant Mr. Davalier's parole with any conditions that are deemed appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. Ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, Jackson?
All right, Mr. Davalier. You had a very good interview. Are you frozen?
No.
Okay. Mr. Davalier, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
You had a very good interview today. Actually, you surprised me because I didn't expect you to interview as well as you did, but you had a very good interview. You were honest. I appreciated the fact that you have a good understanding of the harm that you caused to all of the victims in your case, but especially the victim of the sexual offense. You understand that you're an alcoholic and that you will always need to have some support around you, and that you're willing to rely on that support. Also, you have a very good supportive family. Most inmates don't get released with a vehicle and a home that they can move into that belongs to them. And so I think that you're in a good place to be successful. If you stick with your substance abuse classes, I think you should do well. So my vote today would be to grant your early release. And the conditions would be that you have no contact with the victim in this particularly the sexual assault case, that you attend at least 2 AA or NA meetings per week for the duration of your supervision. So that's my vote today.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. Mr. Davalier, I enjoyed listening to the conversation. I echo everything that Mrs. Jackson has said, you've done some good work. So my vote today also is to grant. You have a low static 99 score, you have good family support, a good transition plan, and of course, because of the positive remarks by Warden Day, with the same special conditions that Mrs. Jackson outlined. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Davalier, I was concerned when I read your report, especially, you're a moderate risk. We certainly much prefer to see a low risk. You've got high substance abuse needs, but I think you've addressed those things. Your interview was a very good interview today. I think that your aunt, Miss Jarvis, has a tremendous plan for you. She's very willing to help you. The support that you have, the comments from the warden, all make me agree with my colleagues, and that is to vote to grant your parole today. So your parole has been granted. Good luck to you.
Thank you all.
Can you imagine it's only been a year since the last hearing? We'll do one more hearing after this, so stick around. But let's first unpack this. It's just been a year. I mean, like a year and a month. And now all of a sudden he has family support. There was nothing at his last hearing. She even hires him an attorney, Jane Hogan, who now is with the parole board. I don't know. I didn't think it was such a great hearing. His final speech was, "I'm sorry for anyone that I hurt. Apologize to anyone that my choices have affected." He's a repeat offender of children. Repeat. His full term is 2036. He gets out in 2022. Eight months into a relationship is when he does that to the 12-year-old. 2 times he's harmed children. 2 times. I'm glad Miss Jackson spent time going over that. Well, just last year, he has records of contacting the victim. Remember, Mr. O'Shea, I said I wouldn't admit to breaking the law either. It was just last year that he was how do you let this man out? It's pretty amazing what he can get done in 1 year. He can learn how to change his paroles, tactics, get an attorney, manipulate his aunt to buy him a car. Do you think he's actually changed? He's not locked up. He's still out. The records say he's still out. So he's been avoiding getting caught for a year, actually. It'll be a year in 6 days from today that he's been out. He has to serve he'll be in probation for until his full term. $2036. isn't it fascinating? He gets 16 years on a possession charge, but just like handful of years for harming a child. Isn't that just mind-blowing to you? How is that possible? The judge will say, you know what, 16 years for possession, but he got just like 4 years, 10 years, and I'm not exactly sure, but for doing what he did to a child, his stepdaughter, it's just nuts. She states that what he do? Oh, he says that her boyfriend came, so she was, he lied. That was the first hearing. But what actually happened? He appealed because they got him for kidnapping. And what he did was he moved her from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. And he said, well, that's not kidnapping. And he appealed. And what it says here is that dragged the victim by the hair from one side of the truck to the other and forced her to enter the cab, where then she ran and escaped. And he is such great victim awareness. I know it's a year later, but you just can't make this stuff up. Now, where they did get him on parole, he was out on parole, of course, right? And the police and the parole, they do a great job trying to keep these predators away. So they did a random check on his home. It was a sheriff office corporal conducted a routine residence check and screen on April 2007. So they go do a screen in April of 2007. This is 1 year after he gets out for harming children. Oh, there are 2 charges. It's 2 separate charges. This, he was convicted on the same date, and this. Then he gets out after just 6 years, because who cares about children? I mean, come on. It's just a child. 6 years, anything more than that would be too harsh, right? Come on. Wake up, everyone. We can't protect our children. But it seems that, someone said, you know what, let's get him back in jail. So they go to his home and they find narcotics. They find a scale, they find a razor, they find white substance. So he's arrested. Now, here's something that I find to be interesting. Remember, we'll do a hearing after this, so stick around. If you're not watching this in real time, feel free to fast forward if you don't like my dabbling. Just don't leave a negative comment. Why? I do this at the end and you can skip. Do what you want, but I just don't understand. I see people that write these comments like, well, you're and it's like, dude, I'm not interrupting the hearing. You can skip. Is your life so negative that you feel the need to write something negative, a comment on YouTube? I just want to say that when I first started this, I didn't know what to expect. And like, it literally is less than, I think, 1% of people that do that, which is amazing. The Mandalorian family and YouTubers in general, I think, or at least the Mandalorians are really beautiful people. I thought it would be a much higher rate. There are very few trolls. So thank you for that. But anyways, here's something where I do agree with him. If you can imagine, I'll agree with him about something. But he said, wait a minute, when they're arresting, let me get my money to take to jail with me, $660. So he took it from his jeweler, and the sheriff then took the money and confiscated it. And it's all in there. I'll drop the link if you want to go through it. And he said, that's my money. And they said, no, it's obviously related to proceeds through dealing. It's illegal. We can confiscate it. And he took them to court. He represented himself in court. From my understanding, maybe, I don't think that he would get appointed an attorney for this. and he lost in trial, right? And then he appealed it. Now this is the appeal form. The appeal shows that he filed the appeal himself. Now, maybe he used a jailhouse lawyer because it's really, really well written. It looks like a lawyer wrote it. And, either he's really darn smart or use a jailhouse lawyer, and they won the appeal. The Supreme Court, whoever was reviewing the appeal, awarded him his $660 back. They said that there was not enough proof that the money was earned through illegal means, which I agree with. You can't just take someone's money and say that it was used for illegal means. It's $660. It could have come from anything. You're saying that he doesn't have $660 for his name. It has to have been through proceeds. And I happen to like that through the legal system, he was as much as I despise this man, I do like that the system played out where he was able to get the $660 back. So I respectfully dissent. But what I'm going to talk about this here as proof, and what gets me fired up and angry, pissed off really, First Circuit Court, that's where it was, the appeals, is that the DA, over their ego, over nothing, because the cost is way more than $660. So over their ego, they will go to trial. They will take the expense of going to trial to tell the man that, no, this $660 is ours. It was done through illegal means. You cannot have it. But they won't put the effort to go to trial to keep a roach locked up. They'll offer that. They'll offer a plea deal. Explain that to me. Make it make sense. It was just their ego. The sheriff or someone said, no, we want, we're taking this to trial. The cost, you can't even make it up. The amount of money invested to keep the $600 out of him buying commissary, out of him paying overpriced money for a bag of chips, they went to trial. They picked up people and put a jury aside and displaced their lives for this. They could have put any the problem, there are too many trials. They can't keep up. But this, they take to trial. And then on appeal, they lose because it was really, in my opinion, illegal. Can't prove it. It just goes to show, if you want more proof. Now, I understand there are many assistant DAs, there are many parishes, there are many, and one parish might have a really strong stance, and one judge might have a really strong stance on keeping roaches inside, but we don't see a lot of it. So we need to call them out for what it is. And I don't know, we can just bury our heads in the sand, right? And pretend that we don't care. But if you wouldn't see it, I know I wouldn't believe it. I'd have to see it. I would just say, no, you're exaggerating. But that they care about. But him, a roach, it's just, he's a full-blown roach. He also has all of his, other issues. But it's scary to think that he can actually have support and that he's going to be in position now to harm more children. And that's just terrifying. and why he would get out even with this. You have to protect our children. The data shows that they will reoffend. He has shown that he will reoffend. How can you take that chance on a child's life? I don't get it. But let's move to the next hearing. It will be something not Roach-like. Just hang in there for a second. I don't know. Just don't know anymore, right? It's like we're all losing our minds. And thank you, Richard, again for all this.
Okay, we're ready for our next case. Our next case is for Larry McGuire, DOC number 129888. Mr. McGuire, let me explain the process to you. First, Ms. Renata will read some information into the record, and then the board will conduct an interview with you. There are participants who are here today who've indicated they would like to speak. At the appropriate time, they'll be introduced, and we'll allow them to make their statements. At the end, you'll be allowed to make a brief statement before the board votes. Do you understand the process?
Ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Renata.
Good afternoon, Mr. McGuire.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Mr. McGuire, once again, you are Larry McGuire, DOC's number 129888. You're classified as a second felony offender. You're here today because you've submitted an application for clemency. You're requesting a commutation of your sentence, and you were sentenced in November of 1996 in Terrebonne Parish to life for a second-degree murder conviction. Is that information correct, Mr. McGuire?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. McGuire, your case has been assigned to Mr. Tony Marabella. He'll start the interview process with you.
Good afternoon, Mr. McGuire. How are you, sir?
Fine, and yourself?
I'm doing fine. I'm trying to pull up your file on my computer here, and I'm having a little bit of difficulty. It's going to get up here in just a second. I got it right here. Oh, I got all my notes in mine. Mr. McGuire, let's talk a little bit about, how old are you, sir?
57.
And how long have you been in prison?
Since 1992.
And so how long is that? Sure you know.
29 years.
Let's talk a little bit about what happened. This was gun and drug related, right?
Yes, sir.
So tell me what you recall about what happened that particular night.
Well, me and the guy had got into an argument, and he was going to his car to get his gun, and I started shooting. I shot him.
Now, before that, there was a drug deal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You bought some drugs from.
Yes, sir. I can't hear you now. I can't hear. The boy going, I can't hear you.
No, just going, just that we can hear from there.
You can't hear me, sir?
I can hear you now. Yeah, I can.
We can hear you now. Oh, okay. All right.
We lost for a minute.
So tell me about what was happening that night.
The night of the incident,
Yeah.
I was going to my home for the look at a basketball game, and him and 3 guys were sitting on the car, and he stopped me and asked me about some drugs. And
So you had previously bought some drugs from him.
no,
right?
he accused me of taking some drugs.
I hear he accused, but you had previously bought some drugs from him, isn't that right?
Yeah,
And he accused you of taking some other drugs.
yeah,
from him.
yes, sir.
And you had a gun. What were you doing with a gun?
Well,
that was the norm in the atmosphere in my neighborhood. That was the norm. I mean, you know.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the norm. When did you start using drugs?
About when I was about, I want to say about 15 years old.
And what kind of drugs did you start using?
Marijuana.
And did you progress from marijuana to other things?
Yes, sir.
What did you progress to? What other drugs did you use?
Cocaine.
Okay. When did you start using cocaine?
About in, I want to say 82.
So about 10 years before this happened?
Yes, sir.
How often were you using cocaine?
Just casually, I guess. I would say casually.
Well, tell me what casually means.
Like on the weekends.
How much would you use?
Small amounts.
You consider yourself to be a drug addict?
Not now, I'm not.
Well, were you then?
Yes, sir.
Well, let's talk about some of the programs that you've taken. Have you ever had treatment on the outside for drug addiction?
No, sir.
What kind of treatment have you had on the inside?
Substance abuse.
What else? Tell me what substance abuse programs did you take?
The substance abuse program in Angola.
Well, I understand that. Tell me what you learned, or tell me what the program was about.
Okay, well, the substance abuse was about using. They had three categories. They had the user, they had the
abuser,
and they had
the addict.
The addict. Well,
so where do you fall?
Well, at that time of the incident.
Where did you fall? Where do you fall today? Because if you were something back then, you still are today.
No, I don't use drugs today.
So you've been in prison. Will you concede you were a drug addict before you came to prison?
Yes, sir.
And all of the programs you've taken in prison on substance abuse, you now believe you're no longer a drug addict?
Well, I know I'm not a drug addict.
That's a concern to me. So tell me how you're going to, if you get out of prison, how are you going to stay away from drugs?
Working.
Well, you never worked before?
Yeah, I worked before.
Well, you did drugs. What caused you to use drugs?
I guess the peer pressure of the neighborhood. I don't know.
Well, you're going to have the same. The world is just as bad now as it was when you came to prison, probably worse. So you're going to have all kinds of pressures. So tell me what you're going to do, or what your mind tells you you're going to put in place to make sure that Larry McGuire doesn't go back to using drugs.
Okay, well, first of all, sir, I'm not the same person that I used to be, okay?
I accept that. You're older.
And I'm older and I'm wiser too.
Well, I'm trying to find out how wise you are about drug abuse and drug addiction. Because you are a drug addict, and I want to know, if I vote to let you out, what assurances I have you're not going to hit the streets and do the same thing you did before?
Sir, right now they have drugs in Angola. I don't use drugs because I don't have a desire. I done lost family members. I have a niece that's brain dead because of drugs. Drugs is no longer a part of my life and will never be again.
You know, Mr. McGuire, I hear you as you sit here today, and I just want to tell you a little bit about my history. I ran a drug court for 14 years, and every drug addict that came before me truthfully and honestly said to me, I'm done with drugs. I've had my last drug. Many of them left. 2 weeks later, they either overdosed or back on drugs. You're a drug addict. I need to know, if I vote to let you out, what you're going to put in place to make sure all the problems, all the issues, all of the concerns that you had before you came to prison, when they bear down on you again, you won't resort back to drugs. You're not using drugs now because you're in prison. Sure, they got them there, you can find them, but they'll know in a day that you're using drugs again. We won't have that kind of supervision over you when you get out. You'll be a free man. How are you going to put something in place to convince me that you're not going to go back to using drugs? What have you learned in substance abuse? Did they give you some tools when you get out of prison to try to quit using drugs?
I don't use drugs. I don't have to quit because I don't use them no more. It's been 29 years since I used drugs. I don't have a desire, and I know I'm not going to use no drugs because, like I said before, it's not a part of my life. The good Lord done deliver me from that. So I mean, drugs is not in the equation for me anymore.
Now, you applied for clemency or parole pardon back in 2013, right?
Yes, sir.
And what happened on that? Did you get granted?
No, they denied me. I had victim opposition.
Why did they deny you?
Victim opposition.
Okay. Well, what have you done since then, 2013? What programs have you taken since then?
Well, I took Thanking for a Change. I took anger management. I took many programs. I was in the
12-step program.
I finished the 12-step program. I finished 100 hours.
Tell me about the 12-step program. Is that something important to you?
Yeah, 12-step program. First step was let you know that if you had a problem, you got to confess it and deal with your problem. Then next step was to get to the good Lord, you know. And
well, tell me about the 12 steps. Do you think that that's something that you need to continue in your life when you get out?
Well, yeah, I think it would be wise. I mean, you know.
You don't think it's necessary, but wise, maybe, to do it?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What about gun possession? I've read your report and you said, you know, if I had to do it all over again, I would do the same thing. I'd shoot the guy again. Is that true? I mean, tell me about that. Tell me how you feel about the crime you committed.
I felt at the time, right now, I feel like I understand that I was wrong. I understand I was wrong. I was down bad. At the time, I felt like I was precedent to doing it. I felt like it was victim precipitation or victim provokers. I felt like I was provoked. But as time went on, and then the different classes I was taking, you know, I learned that you got to take responsibility of your actions, you know. And not only that, if I hadn't been using drugs and put myself in that position, none of this shit wouldn't have occurred. So I
do agree with you, and that's why I'm so very concerned about what your plan is.
I plan
to get out.
When I get out, sir, when I get out, I plan on getting my CDL driver's license and driving truck drivers. I've been studying CDL books up here, and
that's good work, and I appreciate that. What are your plans to make sure you're going to stay off of drugs? What support do you have out there? What are you going to do?
I have family support, and I have support of my pastor in my church to help me maintain, you know.
Do you know what your triggers are that prompt you to take drugs?
My triggers, yeah, I would say probably mental stress or whatever.
What?
Mental stress, I guess.
Okay. Well, what happens when you get back out there and there's mental stress? That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not trying to browbeat you. I just want to know if you've got a plan in place. I hear you say, I'm not going to do drugs. And I believe you as you sit there. But when you get out in the world, stuff happens. You get bad days. Jobs don't come through. Families get injured. Families get hurt. You go into depression. That's when you go back to drugs. What are you going to do to support yourself to make sure you don't go back to using drugs? You took classes in prison. What did they teach you? What kind of tools did they suggest to Larry McGuire to make sure he doesn't go back to getting all that mental stress?
But they told me to stop and think before I react and do anything that detrimental to my health or to the health of the people out there, you know?
They didn't suggest any sort of proactive things. In other words, they didn't suggest that maybe you should go to meetings every couple of days to make sure, even when you're feeling good, go to meetings and make sure everything is going well. Nobody suggested that to you?
Yeah, I would do that too. Go to a meeting if, that's required, I would do that.
Well, if required, would you do that? What is Larry McGuire going to do to make sure you don't go back to using drugs?
I plan on driving trucks. If I have time to go to the meetings, I will go to the meetings. But truck driving, you're gonna be on the road, you know.
That's the concern.
If I can't drive, I just have to maybe use my other skills like welding or something to go to the meetings, you know.
I believe the meetings are just as important as the truck driving, if not more so.
Well, I would do that.
Now, you did get your GED, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you've had 28 write-ups. Your last one was in 2014, so you've done well in prison.
Yes, sir.
We have someone there, Warden. Can you tell us a little bit about Mr. McGuire?
Yeah, this is Warden Falvey. He's held jobs, done what he needed to do as far as maintaining his class as far as a minimum. He started out back in 2012 as a Min C, then in August of 13 a Min B. He recently got his Min A in March of 21. His write-ups have, like you said, back was in 2014, has done well up to this point. Have not had a whole lot of problems with him.
Great, thank you, Warden. Madam Chairman, that's all the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Ms. Jackson, I'm sorry, do you have any questions?
Yes, I'll just ask him a couple. Mr. McGuire, I never served on a drug court, but I was a judge for 28 years, and I dealt with a lot of people who had addictions. And you could always tell those people who weren't quite ready. They didn't seem to grasp their problem, or they tended to think that they really didn't have a problem. The thing that concerns me about you is that in your response to Judge Marabella, what you told him was, well, if I have to, or that's a condition of my parole, or if. I never heard you say, I understand that I have a drug issue, and I understand that I need to get myself into meetings or get myself into some structure to protect me from relapse, because relapse is real. And good intentions will go out the window if you get out of jail and you don't have a plan or a safety net to keep you from lapsing into old habits. And I'm not hearing that from you. I'm hearing you telling us one thing, but telling yourself, I don't have a problem. I don't need to do any of this. All I need to do is get a job. And I have heard that countless times. A job will not keep you sober. That's not the tool that's going to keep you sober. And I'm just not hearing from you that you get it, that you understand that you've got to take some definite, concrete steps to keep yourself from relapsing. So I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I've been off. I don't think really, to be honest with y'all, I see what y'all saying, but I've been off a drug for 29 years. So to me, myself, y'all, the board is steady stressing relapse. And I'm saying that drugs is not a part of my life. So I'm not getting the glitch of it. You know, y'all concerned about me relapsing, and I'm telling you that after 29 years, I haven't used drugs, and drugs is not a part of my life. And y'all, everybody's saying that I'm a drug addict. I mean, I don't get it.
I know you don't. Thank you.
Because, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Mr. Wise has a question.
Yes, ma'am. You know what? I got a problem with your attitude. And I'll tell you another thing I got a problem with. 22 times you've been arrested since before this crime here. That gives me a big problem right there. You was arrested before all this came up and before you got this murder. And you sitting here telling people you don't know what their problem is. That's enough. You need to look in the mirror, probably. And you'll see what the problem is.
I'm looking in the mirror.
Thank you.
I'm looking in the mirror.
All right. I see no other questions. Ms. Leah, can you introduce the speakers?
Yes, ma'am. We have several people here that are all going to speak today. We have Bambi Lynn Harding Matthews. She's here in opposition, the sister of the victim. We have Ashley Green, sister of the victim. In opposition, we have Margaret Green Lagarde, the victim's mother, also in opposition. Here in support, we have Mary Boyd, the sister, Barry McGuire, the brother, both of whom will be speaking. And we have Brenda Marshall, a sister. She will not be speaking. So first we'll hear from Miss Mary Boyd here in support. You have 3 minutes, Miss Mary.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Madam Chairman and members of the board. I'm Mary Boyd, United States Navy retired. I live in Dallas, Texas. My family is in Houma, Louisiana, and I'm here pleading for my brother's release. My brother, my siblings, my mother, myself, all of my family were truly sorry for the death of Mr. Harding in 1992. My brother is not really the monster that everyone is making him out to be. You know, I mean, he did wrong. He understands that he did wrong. This has affected our family as well as the victim's family. And I'm pleading with you guys to just look at the situation. I mean, he may seem to have an attitude, but it's not really an attitude. Larry is a very calm person, even though it don't seem like it. He is a very calm and loving person. I mean, before all of this went down, you're saying he, was in and out of trouble like 29 times or whatever. But what you don't really realize is that Larry was a serious protector of young people and old. He was in the streets. It's a part of life out there, what they went through. And I'm sorry for Mrs. Lagarde about her son. I know how it feels because I've lost a son also. And it's not, it's a painful thing. My brother, I think he's sorry and he's grown up, really. When he went to trial for this, they offered him 15 years. He's been incarcerated for about 29 years, 27 in Angola, I believe, and 2 in Terrebonne Parish. I believe he's done his time for this and he should be forgiven. I don't think he's gonna relapse. And when he's saying what he's saying, that he is no longer dependent on drugs? He's not. I know my brother, and I know there's nothing that could make him go back to being what he was prior to going to prison. He is a strong individual, and I really don't think he would relapse. That's not, something that he want to do. He's told me many times how sorry he is for this incident, and I believe that he would be a great asset to the community, especially in reaching the younger kids of this generation. And just like, the gentleman said, no, it's the same game on the street now as it was then. But they need guys like my brother on the street to talk to reach these youngsters. Someone need to reach them. And it will be, a person like him to do that. We love our brother dearly. And I just think that he's done enough time. And if he is pardoned, we're there to support him. We are there. His family is there to support him, So all I have to say is I pray to God that you guys find it in your heart to pardon him. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Next, we will hear from the brother, Mr. Barry McGuire.
Thanks, son. Good afternoon. You guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Please make your statement. You have 3 minutes.
You guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Please make your statement.
Yeah, on behalf of Larry, like my sister said, he does have a support system. As far as meetings, I can get him a job. I think you guys got a letter from our general manager at the Waterworks. I know he's into the truck thing, but if he come to Waterworks, he would have to be in a rehabilitation program. That's one of the stipulations to him getting a job over there. So he does have a support system. I want to say to the mother of the victim, I never got the chance to tell her that I'm sorry for her loss. I know how she feels. I've lost 2 or 3 nephews, or 2 nephews and a cousin, and I know it hurts. But I just want to ask her just to forgive my brother. And that's all. I'm not going to take all you guys' time, but he does have a support system, and he will be an asset to the community.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Next, we'll hear from the opposing side. Ms. Bambi Matthews, we'll hear from you next, please.
Hi, yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Bambi Lynn Harding Matthews. I am the sister to James Dion Harding. I am a nurse, and I have a very successful home health care business myself. I just want to address Mr. McGuire because all I've heard the whole time you spoke was rambling and not taking accountability for your own actions that night, as you put it, the incident or a murder. Okay, let's be clear.
Ms. Matthews,
Yes.
please direct your comments to the board, not to Mr. McGuire.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I want to direct to the board. I sat and listened to him ramble on and put it as if it was everyone else issues and problems that landed him in jail and not taking accountability for what happened that night, May 26, 1992, the night he decided to murder my brother, and cold-blooded, such as all of the witnesses spoke up in the defense of my brother, okay? He has never once apologized to my mother. He doesn't even sound sorry. As far as I'm concerned, he has spent 29 years in prison waiting for his turn to come home. He has no right to come home. He took the life of my brother, a 20-year-old. I have 3 sons that are 21, 20, and 18. And as I look at them, I realize now that my brother was just a kid, his own self. He says that he protected, well, his family says he protected the community. My brother protected us. My brother was more than a brother to me. My brother was a father to me and my sister and brother. My mother was a single mother working. So he changed our life drastically. The things that we went through and I went through for not having my brother there can never be taken back. He wants to come home and I understand that. But the last time I saw my brother was May 26, 1992. I can't call my brother. I can't talk to him. I can't see him. All I have is what if. My brother was a kind kid. He was dedicated. He was full of love and compassion, and he had so much potential. And all I can sit and wonder is, what type of father would he have been? What? So I do not feel like Mr. Larry McGuire has the right to come home. No, he has not served his time. He took a life. And there is no amount of time that can make up for that. And as far as the community, it is still the same crime-ridden community. There are people hanging out on the corner, drinking beer and getting high and everything. There is nothing in that community except what was there when Mr. McGuire was arrested May 26, 1992 for killing my brother. So I am opposed to him coming out. His sentence was life, and that's what it should be. That's all I have to say. Thank you, board.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Ashley Green.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, hi. Okay, I'm going to read. Here I go. It says, I can't go anymore. Those are the words my brother said before he collapsed from multiple gunshot wounds by Mr. Larry McGuire.
Ms. Ashley, Ms. Green, do you have YouTube playing in the background?
I'm going to turn it off.
Yes, ma'am, please.
It's off right
now. Okay, thank you.
I just found
interference.
Well,
thank you, ma'am.
I hope you are a better person than you were on May 26, 1992. If not, you did the crime. Please serve your time. I am very positive if my brother was here today, that he would have been an awesome father, an awesome contribution to Parole Parish, to the world. All I remember of my brother whenever I was 9, he had his shirt tucked in. He bought me my first bicycle. He gave me gifts. He taught me even how to read. I remember him working. He picked up garbage trucks. He worked offshore. He's done all this before 20 years old. And now that I'm older and mature, I look back, I said, my brother was very mature for his age. All I remember was him working. He always had his shirt tucked in. And if anybody, you ask anybody, they remember James Dion Harden as a respectable young man. And that's how I remember him at 9 years old. I'm sorry for the pain that you caused your family, and I wish you the best. It's all about getting better and being better and learning from our mistakes. And I hope that you learn, because I know you have a lot of time to think about it. And that's all that I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Ms. Renata, we had one more speaker that they were not able to make contact with, so that we're done with the speakers for this case.
All right, thank you, Ms. Roten, and thanks everybody who participated. Mr. McGuire, is there a statement you'd like to make to wrap it up?
No, I'm done.
You're good? Okay. Mr. Marabella, you're the lead vote. Are you prepared to vote?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. McGuire, I've listened to what everyone had to say, and I want to say to you, I want to compliment you for the way you've handled yourself while you've been in prison. You've been in prison for 29 years. That's a long time. And I believe everything that you've said to me today about what you've learned while you've been in prison. I think you're a different person. I think you're mature, for sure. You've got a good support. But what you seem to be missing, or the piece that we're trying to talk with you about, that you continue to beat up against us, is this drug issue. You are here because of drugs. You're here because of drugs and guns, and you killed a man. Now, one of your supporters said you're not a monster. No one suggests that you are a monster. I'm here to tell you you're a man with a disease. Drug addiction is a disease, just like cancer. And if you don't get the proper treatment for cancer, you die. But drug addiction, on the other hand, if we let you out and you go back and don't get what you need to do, you could harm other people, just like you did that got you in prison. Drug addiction isn't a choice, it's a disease. And you have to treat that disease. You don't recognize that you have that disease. You know, this board, and I've been on this board for over a year now, this board is a board that wants to see people who deserve to get out, get out. And we don't want them to come back. And that's my concern about you. If I vote today to let you out with the attitude you seem to have about your addiction, I'm concerned that you may go back at some point to using drugs. I hear you thinking, oh no, I'm smart, I'm strong, I won't do that. I don't think that's the case. I think you need some more introspection. You need to look inside yourself. You need to take some more classes that involve substance abuse to realize that you are, in fact, an addict. You will be an addict for the rest of your life. And you need to put in place certain tools and plans for contingencies. You don't go get support when you're in the middle of a crisis. You have your support set up when there is a crisis or when your mental issues come about. I don't think you're ready to do that right now. I'm not saying you're far from that, but you're just not ready today. If you look into that and take more classes and come back and understand what your addiction is, I'll be the first person to vote for you if you continue to do well that you're doing while you're in prison. But today, my vote is to deny your request.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Ms. Jackson?
Yes, I feel the same way. I don't feel like you've reached that breakthrough point where you understand the nature of addiction and the risk that you run if you don't have something in place. You know, I've seen lots of people in jail, and they may have been in jail for 5 years, and then they come home, and shortly thereafter, they're back in court because they've relapsed. So relapse is real. And if you don't understand that, you know, when you think you're strong, it's when you're the weakest. Because you haven't put in place the things that you need to keep you from falling. And so I am also going to deny your request. And I do encourage you to understand, you know, the reality of addiction and understand how hard it's going to be when you get out. You know, life's not going to be a bowl of cherries. It's going to be really difficult when you get out. You're going to have a lot of stress. And if you're not equipped to deal with that stress, then you're gonna fall back into what is comfortable. And that is going back into drug use. And so until you get over that hump, my vote is to deny.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Roche?
Mr. McGuire, I have a different perspective on your interview today. You did interview very well. You're not what I would consider appropriate for a commutation of sentence simply because of your history. You have an extensive criminal background. You have a history of violence. You have a history of firearm charges. And usually when I see an individual who is making an application for a commutation of sentence, there's one or two offenses, and he's trying to make amends, and he wants some relief because he actually made a mistake. In your case, you have over 22 or 23 arrests, multiple arrests for weapons charges, multiple violent offenses, and you were not ready today to interview with this panel because you don't have your mind right. That is the reason why I am denying your request.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Wise?
At this time, I'm going to be voting to deny. You need more programs. You was arrested 22, 23 times, like Mr. Roche said before this second-degree murder. You got strong law enforcement opposition, also strong victims opposition. So you need to try to get it right up the road there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. So, Mr. McGuire, you received 4 votes to deny your application for clemency. So this afternoon, your application for clemency is denied. You have some more work to do, sir. Reapply when you're eligible.
I'm finished with the work.
Thank you.
I'm finished with all that.
What do you say?
Okay.
I'm fed up with all the work. I'm fed up with all that. If that was not any affirmation that they needed, a sign of his immaturity, a sign that they made the right move. It was a bad interview, and I think that seeing these bad interviews can give us an appreciation for the quality of the good interviews, or even interviews that we might not consider good, but it's just they're very different. The level of maturity, the work that the inmate put in, the way they're able to articulate things, kind of like what Mr. Roche said. In the sense, well, I guess not like what Mr. Roche said, but also many of the commutations we do have, like he said, is just one act of violence, and they can be a wretched act, and they're horrible. The commutation hearings they're just painful to watch because of what they had done. But it was a good point. It's true. Oftentimes, it's first felony offenders, and it's I don't think it's a coincidence. Birds of a feather kind of flock together, and he's surrounded by people who are in denial about what he did. It's every time he's on the phone, they're telling him that he's a good guy, that he was protecting the neighborhood, just the game of the streets. He, in his prior written statement, it's he didn't do anything wrong. He would do it again. He doesn't believe that what he did was wrong. Then what really ticked me off was when his uncle or cousin or brother, I forget, He said, I know how the mother feels. I lost 2 or 3 nephews. And first of all, how do you not know how many nephews you lost? And then, even if you knew how many nephews you lost, it's not the same thing, dude. You don't know how she feels. That just pissed me off. There's nothing like losing a child, from what I'm told from people who have lost. My aunt lost a child. My first cousin, the sad part was I have a lot of first cousins. I can't even count. I mean, I could count, but I have a lot. And he was my best friend, you know? Like we were the same age. We went to school together, and you know, like we were close. And then he just then he wasn't there anymore. It was interesting. Mr. Wise just jumps out and says, I got a problem with your attitude. He's I don't know why he's not on the board anymore, but I am not disappointed about him not being on the board anymore. I do like this setup though. I think it's pretty neat. But I do have like a bunch of records that Richard sent me. The problem is none of the records, I'll put it in the description if you're interested, but none of them actually go through the details of the crime. Oftentimes they'll have facts of the crime, but they don't have facts of the crime. And so there's not much to read. There is an interesting thing here where it looks like he sued the state of Louisiana over a problem with his wisdom tooth and the way that they didn't properly attend to it. And man, I bet it does suck being in Angola and having a toothache, having any problems. From what I've seen, you do not want to get sick in prison. You do not want to get sick in prison. I mean, think about it. The doctors that are helping you, it's you would assume that, you know, if they could be somewhere else, they would be probably. And the thing is that even with his crazy record, what just happened? I wouldn't be surprised that with a good interview, he could have mutation sentence because he served 29 years. And it, he was a dealer, and they both were, and it's 29 years. And if he had this great interview, but he didn't. And you cannot, I mean, also, I forgot, I wanted to say this from the very beginning. He gets Mr. Marabella, and he just drills into the whole addiction thing. And this guy had zero preparation, none. I mean, you would think this was in his first commutation hearing. It was the second. And we know what preparation looks like. You have to go through the whole process. I am an addict. I'll always be an addict. I'm going to go to AA and NA. I'm going to seek out a sponsor. And it's like, and he hasn't figured it out yet. And this is his second commutation hearing. He hasn't figured it out yet. And we know in Angola, there are dozens and dozens and dozens that have figured it out. So, it is a further indication or a further filter or processing point, because it's like you just have to put in the effort to figure it out. You would think, okay, well, if he got his commutation approved, maybe I should go ask him how he did it. But there's no thinking about it. There's just really just self pity and blame, and unfortunately it's being reinforced by his family members, and really, it's about problem solving. If he could get his freedom, we've seen it in the system, and it would be putting in the work, and it would be figuring out how to articulate an interview that will get you commuted. But it's more than just an interview. It's also about putting in the right steps that would help him. And he showed nothing that would make you think that he would be able to stay out. That's the sad truth. But we've seen been here for almost 2 hours, and I do thank you for hanging in here with me, and we'll see you tomorrow. But with that, I'll let you go.